I am Ryan. I've just finished high school and will be starting university this year. I live in a rural part of Pennsylvania. I'm a regular listener of Bhut Com. Since childhood, I've had a hobby of collecting supernatural or miraculous stories. Today I am going to share a story from my collection, told to me by an old man I know. It's a story involving black magic and Jinn. I will try to tell it in his words. The events took place many years ago in the post-war era. I was Adam then, just entering my youth. At that age, people are the bravest. I was fearless. I never believed in the supernatural until it happened to me. The time was likely around 1973 or 1974. My family home was a massive estate, inherited from our ancestors with great prestige. My forefathers came from Europe and settled here. My grandfather lived here as a stakeholder in the family land. To get from the house to the market, it was about an hour's walk. To reach the market, one had to cross an open field, then an old cemetery, and finally a cremation ground. The village was wrapped in a dense green blanket of trees. It felt like night even before sunset. There was no electricity, and the roads were made of dirt. After dusk, not even a bird's chirp could be heard. My grandmother was my only guardian then. My parents had passed away before I was 6. The story begins one day when I went to a nearby town to watch a traveling theater show with friends. It became midnight before I knew it. When the show ended, everyone left for their own homes. I set off with a lantern in my hand. I wasn't afraid. I had gone to shows with my grandfather many times, but this was my first time alone. I reached the cremation ground. On the left was the cremation site, and on the right was a small shack. A conjurer, spiritualist, lived there. He hadn't lived there long, having arrived during the war years. He was so thin his skin seemed stuck to his bones. He had little contact with people. During the day he never left his hut. He could be seen sitting on the floor with his eyes closed. No one knew what he ate. At night he would sit in front of his door. As I walked past him that night, a very heavy, deep voice suddenly said, "Don't go forward. Stay here." I was startled. I had never heard such a heavy voice in my life, but I ignored him and kept walking. After passing the cremation ground, the road was straight but flanked by dense woods. A few minutes later, I heard sounds, muffled voices, as if 3 or 4 people were speaking together. "Come, come. Come closer." For the first time in my life, I trembled with fear. Then someone whispered right into my ear, "Come, just a little closer." The voices would fade and then return. I began reciting prayers in my head. Suddenly, I saw someone standing in front of me. I raised my lantern and saw an old man nearly 6 feet tall. He was naked. As I looked, his form began to distort. His eyes grew larger than humanly possible, bulging out. His tongue extended abnormally down to his chest, flickering. A hole formed where his nose should be. His body became covered in black fur. He gestured for me to come closer. I felt like I was going to faint. In the blink of an eye, the creature was right at my face. He grabbed my throat with his hairy hand and lifted me off the ground. My lantern fell. I was gasping for air, my legs kicking wildly like a man on a gallows. I thought this was the end. Suddenly, he let me go. I fell to the ground, coughing. When I looked up, the conjurer from the shack was standing behind me, his eyes a bloodshot red, his brow furrowed in rage. In a harsh, grating voice, he said, "You have too much ego, don't you? Do you want to die? Go jump in the river, jump in a fire. Why did you come here? They have recognized you. You are in great danger now. They won't stop until you are dead. They will tear your head from your shoulders and eat your brain. Why wouldn't they? There is a stain on your bloodline. Leave the lantern and come with me." He walked toward his shack, and I followed. I asked, "A stain on my blood? What do you mean?" He didn't answer. He took me inside, sprinkled some water on me, and tied a red thread around my wrist. He said, This spirit is very powerful. I have sent him away for a short time, but he isn't gone. He will return. But tonight you are safe. Go home in the morning and tell the eldest member of your family. He has returned." I stayed there until dawn. Looking around the room, I saw 10 human skulls, along with skulls of goats and cows. There was a large oil painting of people in black robes looking at a blood-red sky surrounded by skulls. It was terrifying. When I returned home, my grandfather looked at my face and the marks on my neck. He gasped. "Just as I thought, he's back. How much more does he want? When will he be satisfied?" He pulled 3 talismans from an old trunk, one for me, one for my grandmother, and one for himself. He told me never to take it off.
My grandfather began to explain. It started with my grandfather's father, William Harrison, Zemindar. He was a man of great power, but also great arrogance. Once a month, he held grand parties with dancers from all over. At one such party, he became obsessed with a dancer and made a vile proposal. When the dancers begged for mercy, he had them all bound and thrown into a deep well. He kept one girl captive, torturing her for 4 days. She eventually escaped and found refuge with an old mystic in the woods. William sent men who found her and brutally murdered her. The old mystic, having lost everything, used his own blood to perform a dark ritual. He made a pact with a devil, an Ifrit, to hunt down our bloodline. The curse was that every firstborn son, upon reaching maturity, would have his head torn from his body. My own father and brothers were killed in this parade of death. Finally, my grandfather found a spiritual master in New York. The master said the entity could be bound but not destroyed, and it required a life sacrifice. My grandfather chose to sacrifice himself. The Ifrit was bound in a black bottle and buried with my grandfather's headless body. Grandfather said we had to go to the master's disciple, who was now in Philadelphia. As we crossed a river by boat that evening, the conjurer's severed head suddenly landed on the boat. The air grew freezing. Muffled laughter surrounded us. The boat began to rock violently. The 2 rowers, consumed by fear, removed their protective talismans. Immediately, the Ifrit snatched one of them, lifting him into the air and tearing his head off. Blood sprayed everywhere. The creature began to lap up the blood with its flickering tongue. My grandfather began reciting the call to prayer, Avan, at the top of his lungs. The Ifrit dropped the other rower, but he was already dead from his wounds. We finally reached a religious school, madrasa. The master there, Father Abdullah, was waiting for us. He sat us down and revealed a shocking truth. "I am not a human being like you. I am a Jinn, a servant of God. My name is Abdullah bin Mustafa." He and his 7 companions, also Jinn, had been tasked with protecting our family. That night, a spiritual war broke out. A violent storm shook the building. A voice screamed from the shadows, "Let me go! Why do you protect these worthless humans?" Abdullah grabbed the invisible entity and shouted, "By the name of God, today I will destroy you." The Ifrit was forced into a visible form, the size of a cat, and was eventually bound in a black metal box. Abdullah explained how the Ifrit had escaped. My grandfather's younger brother, driven by greed, had dug up the buried box in New York, thinking it held treasure. The Ifrit killed him and his family instantly, and then came for us. Years passed. I got married and had a beautiful baby girl. I thought the nightmare was over, but one night I saw a dream of a dark figure saying, "My revenge is not yet complete." I woke up to a nightmare. My daughter, lying right next to me, had her head severed from her body. Abdullah appeared one last time and whispered, "Because she was the firstborn girl of the new generation, the devil fulfilled his ancient vow." My wife lost her mind from the grief. I never married again. That was the story. Ryan Kandakar, Pennsylvania.